All right, folks, it's the morning time. It's Wednesday. You know what it's time for. It's time for a video that's going to appeal to exactly three of you, but those three of you, it's really going to sink in. All right? So, a preamble. All right? Now, in this house, we stand film, and in particular, we stand George Miller. Okay? This shelf, except for this little partition right here, is all works of George Miller. Your Mad Maxes, your Lorenzo Zoil, your Witches of Eastwick, your 3,000 Years of Longing, and of course, your Happy Feet. All right, he's the guy. You know, at some point I'm going to write a monograph about his work. Now, the reason I bring this up is, of course, this last year, in May, at the end of May, we saw the release of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I've been fucking crazy about that movie, waiting for it to come out, seeing it, God, 5 times in the theaters. That's who I am, all right? Now, we're in a kind of a weird time when it comes to home releases and things like that, right? Because while the streaming bubble is rapidly approaching the point where it's going to pop, and we're going to see a proliferation of physical media once again, we're still, these studios are still being run by, complete nincompoops, okay? Now that applies to a lot of areas. Of course, it applies to the release of films as well, Furiosa is a good example because Furiosa was not very well advertised. There are very many people who didn't know that it was a thing somehow. I could go on. I can go on about that, right? But the real thing that bugs me, all right, is that now, yesterday, Tuesday, that's right, Tuesday, yesterday even, the day of home release for Furiosa. Now, it's been on streaming for about a month, okay? But I don't do streaming because I'm a Luddite, and also because, I try to stick with physical media, and the physical media is important, and so I don't have any streaming services to speak of. I go out and I buy my things, I'm very selective with what I buy because, times is tough right now, So yesterday, I go out to go grab a copy of Furiosa, okay? And now, here's the thing. Now, here's a brief comparison for you of two studio releases, one that actually just came out yesterday as well that I picked up, and then another that is a 4K of a movie that came out last year, just so you guys can have kind of a, a comparison here for what I'm talking about. All right? Now, this is The Bike Riders. Now, The Bike Riders is a great film by Jeff Nichols, who, he always kills it. Midnight Special's great, Mud is great, Shotgun Story, all these great films. Loving is fantastic. But we're talking about physical media, so as you can see, it has a slipcase, it has a tough, dense cover. This is pretty standard, okay? And it's got a ton of, extras and whatnot, and it's great to see those coming back because people seem to be under the impression that they've gone away for some reason. They haven't. Okay, so that's fantastic, all right? Now we have a 4K release of a film that came out last year, which is The Batman, all right? 4K Ultra UHD, all right? And the thing about it is, I haven't upgraded yet to 4K HD. I keep promising myself that I will one day upgrade to 4K UHD. It has not yet happened. We'll see. But what I mean to bring up when I bring this up is that, as you can see, with this 4K set, you also have, of course, the Blu-ray inside for those who haven't updated yet and who will update or upgrade at some point, right? That makes sense, doesn't it? I think. Help me. In addition to this, I was surprised because there's a metric ton of special features, relatively speaking. I mean, we used to have a lot more, but So now, that's the standard. Now we get to Furiosa. Okay. Now, Furiosa, favorite film of last year. I could go on and on and on about it for hours. One day I will. But we're talking about physical media right now. We're talking about the physical release of this film right now. So what we have for one of the most well-respected critically but not very successful financially, theatrically at least, films of last year's. We have a very, very flimsy, uh, no frills, no nothing case. Uh, I actually had to change the case out because every one of the Blu-ray that were at the place that I went to go pick it up at, they were all rotted, right? And that's something that happens with these eco cases, right? Now, the funny thing is, they're all made of plastic. They're still not going to degrade. The reason why they use these is, just to kind of give lip service to the idea of being, of being ecologically safe. But the downside of it is that, they still end up in the landfills all the same. And the other downside of it, too, is that it tends to rot the plastic, and if you're not quick enough, it'll rot the discs, right? So if you're like me, and I know I am, you have to occasionally replace your plastic Blu-ray cases, which is what I had to do, okay? Now, here's the thing that really bugs me, okay? And this is... if you haven't clicked off by now, I would not blame you, okay? So we have our special features, okay? And as you can see, there's two things for special features. I know. I'm complaining about nothing in a time of pure frivolity. But bear with me, all right? For us physical media heads, this is like a thing, okay? Now, with Furiosa, if you go and you look at the 4K release, right? There are a metric ton of special features, okay? And on digital, you actually get now the black and chrome version, which is a really, really great theoretical experiment that George Miller did about, taking the color out of the thing, making it black and white. Seems simple. It is deceptively simple. But what that does is it makes you focus more on composition and editing and all those other tools of the language that we use when we talk about cinema, right? Now, it's ready. The black and chrome is ready. Like, it's done. But for some reason, WB, for reasons of economy, decided to do three really silly things, right? What they decided to do was to split the 4K and the Blu-ray up into their own completely separate releases. Your 4K doesn't include a Blu-ray, which is bizarre. And then they also decided to go with the smallest size Blu-ray in terms of storage that you could do for a feature film. And so to save space on that disc, they left off a lot of content, which is bizarre. It's bizarre. All right? Now, I understand, of course, first off, that, we're all in hard times right now. And I also know that, a lot of this we can ultimately put at the blame of David Slapsap. But it's still weird, right? Come on, guys. Come on. It's George Miller. He's one of the great masters of modern cinema over here. And I've been saying that since the Happy Feet days, y'all. But there is a Steelbook release that has both. That has all the content that you want. And they are releasing other releases next month. So they're really spacing this stuff out. Who knows why? But it's just a series of bizarre choices that I just don't understand, They did the same thing with Fury Road when it came out, right? So this is actually a series of choices going back like longer than that. When Fury Road came out, a series of onboard documentaries on the disc. They were very short, each about 10 minutes apiece. They were kind of what you would call EPKs. They were fluff pieces, right? Then about maybe a year and a half later, after all the Oscar wins and it was historic and all that kind of stuff, and it was a big success story, it may have been longer than that, they decided to very subtly release a really great hour and change documentary about the making of the film, which is just a fascinating, thing. In general, there's a couple of books about it that I could suggest to you to read. But they quietly released it with no fanfare on Apple iTunes, and that's the only place that you could view it. That was it. That is absolutely nuts. Why? You know what I mean? Anyway, uh, that's all that I have to say on that. That's that on that. I could go on and on and on, of course, about these qualms I have with certain physical media releases because I put a lot of stock into physical media. I mean, not actual stock. I don't buy stock. I should, but I don't. But I put a lot of stock into physical media because, ultimately, when things come to things, I mean, if you want to be in control of what it is you love and what you want to watch and things like that, and if you want to, you know, if you want to curate uh, the art that you care about. I'm not going to say the media you consume because it's so dispassionate, but if you want to do that, then you owe it to yourself to, build a physical media collection because that's really the only way that you're going to be in control of what it is that you love. I know that sounds weird, but, trust me, other more interested people have written at length about why that's a necessity. In the next couple of years, you're going to see why that is, okay? Now, the thing about it is, when, much like anything else, unless these releases that you're buying, I'll say, are boutique releases like these by curated companies that, have all the love in the world for what it is they're, releasing and the artists that they're, talking about, like your Criterions and your Arrows and even your Studio Canals and things like that. Every film, and this has always been the case, every film is going to get treated like one in a series of, of 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever by the studio distribution companies that make them, right? But I will say, before streaming, there used to be a lot more care and a lot more, what's the phrase? QR? No, QC, that's what it is. Haha. All right, we're getting there. Used to be a lot more QC when it came to home releases and things like that, right? Now, our only hope really right now, as with most things when it comes to film, is that we can only hope that when the bubble of streaming pops, the studios, in their massive shift to reorganize, engage in some kind of weird media return movement or whatever, right? So that we can get back to these kind of halcyon days again. Or, barring that, we can only hope that we end up seeing a flowering of even more boutique labels, right? I will show you. If we take a look at my shelf, you can see Criterions, a lot of Criterions. You can see Arrows, Shout Factories, and so on and so on. And even over there in the corner, unshelled, unfortunately, so I won't show you. You have, of course, Eurekas and Indicators and Umbrella Entertainment, all these great, labels from across the way. And there's even more out there. There's Severin, there's Vinegar Syndrome, there's all these great companies that are putting so much love and care into these films. They're like film schools in a box, which is what they used to call Criterion, right? Well, they still call them Criterion, That's going to be the real hope for physical media going forward. And now to tie this all back together to Furiosa and Mad Max and all that in general, we can only hope that at some point the first Mad Max has been picked up a number of times by boutique labels. Well, two, really. Shout Factory put out a great release, and Kino put out a great release. But we can only hope that the rest of the films get those, get picked up by some label or another at some point, right? My preeminent hope, of course, is Criterion because I am a loyalist and a big giant nerd. But any would do, really. Thanks for watching. I even wore my Furiosa shirt, but it's so faded. Oh, wait, no, you can see it. Cool. I got this in an advanced screening. They were just tossing out shirts and posters and stuff like that, and it was great. I almost got this big Stan Lee poster, and I went to go ask the person who was behind the counter, who was doing all the sign-in registry and things like that about it. But it was so packed that I couldn't get through, so I asked this tall guy, he's like, hey, would you, ask them about that poster? He was like, yeah. So he goes and he's like, "Hey, is that poster up for grabs?" And they were like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Cool," and just grabs it and runs away. Should have known, but anyway. Anyway, have a good morning and a pleasant evening and a pleasant tomorrow.